Well, at the weekend, the Democratic Alliance adopted a policy of non-racialism. In a nutshell, this appears to mean it won't use race to categorise anyone, especially when it comes to legislation. Some commentators have said this may just be an impossible ask, considering our country's racial history and inequality. Political commentator Asanda Ngoasheng joins us now. Asanda, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. Is it possible to have redress in South Africa without race? The DA says you should look at who's poor and who is rich and help the poor. By doing that, you'll be helping black people. That's their argument. What do you make of it?
I think it's quite fascinating that we live in the era in 2020 where we even have to have these conversations. Just look at South African statistics at Stats SA, and they'll tell you that the inequality gap in income is racially based. The inequality gap in income is based on gender. Look at who has the most wealth in South Africa, and it's overwhelmingly based on race. And that's because we're coming from a history of a policy based on race. Where people live is based on race. Where people can go to school was based on race, and so many other things. And so it doesn't make sense to me that you're coming out of a past that's based on race. You talk about redress, but you want to implement everything but the critical factor that was used to get us to this situation. Why is the DA taking us for like idiots, really?
There's a huge conversation around race in this country. I mean, and there has been, you could argue, I suppose, in 1652. But in a way, the conversation now perhaps is driven by the lived experience of people. And I'm talking about racialized inequality that you refer to. It would seem to me that as long as you have racialized inequality, race is a big part of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying you cannot separate South Africa redress, South African inequality and redress from race. You cannot separate it from other demographics like gender, which they're also seeking to do. And so to me, that the DA has decided to go the route of so-called non-racism, and I put it in inverted commas because non-racism actually is not that. Non-racism is about seeking to be in a position wherein race doesn't matter. It doesn't say take it as if it doesn't matter right now. Unless and until we get to that stage and that dream place that every South African wants to be, where race is no longer a factor, we can't, there's no sense in doing what the DA is saying it wants to do. And I'm quite interested in seeing how the municipal elections are going to respond to what the DA has decided, because it makes sense only to the few people that are in the DA. And we're talking about a political party, by the way, that has already lost quite a number of votes in the last election and now is gearing up to lose even more by being tone deaf and by completely misunderstanding the tone in South Africa. Look at the latest headlines in South Africa. It's all about race, and it's all about the clicks issue, and it's all about institutionalized racism and our understanding of the impact of race in this country. And the second biggest political party goes and tells us that they are going to implement policies that have nothing to do with the hottest topic and the most critical topic in this country right now.
I mean, you'll have been watching the clicks issue. I mean, that's the big story of the day, really, what happened with those adverts and the reaction to it. I mean, in a way, that I imagine proves your point. Race is a big thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They are so tone deaf that in their very weekend, when everybody is discussing race, they are saying race is no longer a factor. That just tells you how far removed they are from the reality of the majority of South Africans. And I think, it's okay for the DA to come out and say they are a white minority party. They are interested in the interests of white people in this country. That's okay. The Freedom Front does that and nobody says anything. The problem comes in when they lie and they say they are a party for diverse people. When they lie and say they embrace diversity and multiracialism, and then they act in a way that shows us that they don't. And so the problem with the DA is not that they are for keeping white interests, it's that they keep lying and claiming to be not standing for that. And unless and until they come out and truthfully state that actually what they are interested in is white minority interests, then they are going to face an uphill battle, and they're going to find themselves constantly having to be analyzed by people like us who are going to constantly remind them that race to this day remains the key critical factor and the key indicator of inequality. Look at the poorest person in South Africa. Why is it that it's black people who are the poorest people in South Africa if race is no longer a factor? Look at the most unemployed group in South Africa. Why is it black people if race is no longer the issue? Look at the people who are homeless, the landless. Black people, black people, black people. Why? Because we come from a history of race-based policies, and we are not going to have any redress if we keep trying to run away from that issue.